how many people are aware of it, but Warren Buffett bought a substantial share of Bank of America not too many months ago. And when he was asked, why did you buy so many shares of Bank of America? Why did you take out such a large percentage of Bank of America? Warren Buffett said, well, I went in to buy a toaster and they gave me a bank. What we're going to talk about today are some of the causes of the mortgage debacle. Why did it occur? What were some of the reasons why so much devastation occurred, not just in the U.S. economy, but in the worldwide economy? I'm going to talk about it in several different aspects. The first thing I'm going to talk about is something called the current account surplus or deficit, or the current account balance, as it is called overall. The second thing I'm going to talk about is basically how credit works and why so many fraudulent mortgages or subprime mortgages were able to be sold on the secondary market. And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is how did it work on an individual level? How did it work in the actual home purchasing process? What occurred there to allow this whole process to break down? So the first thing we're going to look at is current account balance. Is there anybody here that understands, when I say the term current account balance, does that make any sense to them? Does it mean anything to you? Okay, great. And that's what I'm here to explain. So current account balance is one of the most important terms you can hear about, and it doesn't get talked about, and it frustrates me, especially when it comes to the United States. Think about your own budget, and think of it, let's say you have $1,000. How much can you actually spend if you have $1,000? You'd think $1,000, right? Well, what if you were able to spend $1,100? Where would that extra $100 come from? Maybe it comes from your parents, or maybe it comes from a credit card, or maybe it comes from robbing a bank. But wherever it comes from, you got that $100 somehow. Well, that's how nations work too. There's no such thing, you can't truly run a deficit. In the United States case, if we run the current account balance, it always ends up even. If you end up having a current account deficit, what it actually means is that someone gave you the money to actually make those purchases. For example, in this case, we're going to look at, if you look here, you see from 1960 to 1980, about when Ronald Reagan came into office, we were running a fairly even current account balance. Once the Reaganomics took place, we ran huge current account deficits. What that really means, and then you can see how it's continued since then, what that really means is that we are buying a lot more goods from other countries than they're buying from us. And there's a lot of things that go into this. You know, oil is a big one, obviously, but also electronics. You can't buy an American-made electronics device anymore. Walmart, you can't buy something made in the United States almost at all from Walmart. And so all these products that we're buying with US dollars. However, once those US dollars go to another country, they've got to figure out something to do with it, because they can't, there's nothing in the United States that they actually want to buy, relatively speaking. And so they have to figure out what they want to do with this money. And there's all kinds of things they can do with the money. They can, if they can't purchase US products, maybe they can purchase US assets. But that ends up becoming politically difficult to do. So what ends up happening is they do something else. They start investing the money back in the United States economy. The biggest, safest investment in the world is what? Does anybody know? Exactly, U.S. Treasuries. And right now, China owns about 20% of the U.S. Treasury bills outstanding, because they have a lot of dollars, they got to put it somewhere, and so that's one of the places they're investing. But they also invest it in other places. As the federal Treasury, as those T-bills start earning a lower and lower amount of interest, they start looking for ways to maximize the return on their money. Not just the Chinese, but everyone that has all these dollars that are floating around all over the place. And it's why remember when the junk bond thing happened in the 1980s? A lot of that was foreign investment trying to earn a higher level of interest. Same thing occurred with the dot-com bust. It was foreign investors, a lot of it, the tipping point was foreign investors coming in and investing, trying to earn a higher rate of return on their money. And so that's a big part of where the mortgage crisis occurred. It was foreign investors having all these US dollars that they didn't know what to do with, and they wanted to earn something a little bit more than a paltry amount being given out by the Federal Treasury. And so what they did, and this is a big old chart, it talks about all the different things that led to the bubble formation. And we're not going to go over every one of these, but the ones I do want to focus on is the credit ratings here, and right here it talks about capital and credit availability and foreign investment. So it's the credit, capital and credit availability and the foreign investment, and then we're going to go over the credit ratings in a second. What happened is these foreign investors were looking for a higher rate of return, and they found it in the mortgage market. And the GSE is government-sponsored enterprise, things like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are pseudo-government outlets. They would actually buy all these home mortgage bonds, and then the foreign investors would buy these pools of bonds to earn a higher level of interest. So how this worked is that what ended up happening is, at first it was good quality loans being done. But there weren't enough loans for all the dollars going out because we were purchasing so many foreign products. So the people in Wall Street started coming up with more products to sell. And they started finding people who didn't necessarily have great credit. Well, a lot of people don't really want to buy something less than AAA quality bonds. Well, what Wall Street figured out is they found an insurance company, the largest in the world, called AIG, and they sold them on the idea of insuring all these risky bonds, and by insuring all these risky bonds, they turned them into AAA quality bonds. And so this is how they sold it throughout the world. They sold at a higher interest rate, and what the investors did not realize is that these were risky bonds. They felt like, well, because they were being insured by AIG, that it was something where they didn't have to worry about getting a return on their money. And everybody basically went broke. The US government had to bail out everybody. And there's a lot of people who say, why did we bail out anybody? Why didn't we just let the whole system break down? And that's a possibility. The problem is you don't know what's on the other side of it. You know, is war on the other side of it? Is famine on the other side of it? Does the whole system break down? And so that's the reason why the US government ended up stepping in, is to preserve the system as it stands. That's all I've got time for to talk about in terms of the mortgage debacle. And I appreciate your time, and I look forward to talking with you again about it. Peter.